my big thing is, by God, yes, you absolutely need to use AI, but AI will crush your differentiation if you still don't have the human community story part.
Welcome to Connect to Market. I'm Casey Cheshire. Join us as we learn from marketing leaders who are driving founder-led growth. We're sponsored by Ringmaster, building B2B podcasts and communities to reconnect you with your audience. All right, let's freaking go. I'm excited. All right, I'm excited about today. This has been an episode that we have been prepping for a while. Conversations have been happening, and I'm so excited to introduce our guest today. But who is he, Casey? Who is he? Let me tell you about him. Marketing leader, thought leader, really a thought leader, two thought leaders, 6-time CMO CPO. He's in the machine identity. He's in the AI native exploring world. He's a growth advisor helping scale SaaS cyber companies. You name it. This guy's a veteran B2B tech executive, and he's been all over the place. Frequent writer, speaker, contributor, recognized authority in mobile, on security and AppSec testing, all sorts of things in the marketing space. Former host of the DevSecOps Bunch, founding board member of the Technology Marketing Alliance, TMA. We'll talk more about that. CMO advisor for the Cybersecurity Marketing Society, which is a super cool group. If you are in cybersecurity and you are a marketer, you need to check that thing out. Chief Market Officer at Corsha, Brian C. Reed. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I can't believe you even said yes. I mean, reading that introduction, you're a busy guy. How do you keep up with it all?
There's a lot going on in the world, but I love building companies, but I also love building marketing communities, right? So, and a big part of my give back as I get later in life is to help with community development, growth, knowledge sharing. You know, we're all in this together. We're all in as marketing people, we're all in the foxhole together with our founders, with our technology leads, our sales teams, right? So
Yeah.
I love doing the community part and the knowledge sharing, and I'm a continuously learning person. So this is a way for me to share what I've learned and hopefully learn more myself.
I love that. You are in the right spot, and I can't wait to learn from you. But in order to do this, I need to go ahead and affix this giant blue foam finger to my hand and ask you, Brian, what is the number one thing that marketers need to do in order to connect to their market?
Don't get lost in AI.
Tell me more.
As you and I were talking weeks ago, AI is basically flattening marketing. It's an incredible power tool. It's an incredible way to get volume and velocity. It's a great way to do analytics. And so by all means, continue to go with AI. But the problem we have is that AI is crushing uniqueness, and everybody sounds the same. Everybody looks the same. Everybody's producing AI slop. Everybody's cranking huge volumes. And when AI first came out, I was talking to various different groups, and I said, yeah, but I still think authentic storytelling is going to win. And so I put together a bit of a manifesto and have been talking more across the community about there's this balance, right? As AI flattens marketing, cue the return of Mad Men. And Mad Men is really the concept of bringing back real, authentic storytelling in the community, from the community to the community. And that's where businesses and leaders in those businesses will differentiate, is authentic storytelling in and from the community while using AI as a production engine kind of layered underneath. And that's my manifesto. That's my hypothesis. That's my topic of the day.
Man, authentic storytelling. I don't where to start. Let's start with the crushing uniqueness first, because that is a particular way of, I mean, there are doomsdayers talking about AI, attacking us with machine guns, and albeit those dog, prototypes are scary, as are the backflip robots, but the uniqueness getting crushed. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so if we're all kind of feeding similar content ideas and similar, raw messaging ideas into the half dozen AI tools that pretty much prevail, and they're all using the same industry collective knowledge that has grown over time, eventually they all kind of wind up sounding like some variation of the same thing, right? And whether you're using Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT, you might get different variations, but we sort of have this similarity or sameness that seems to be coming out of it. And I'm not just talking about like GPTs love M dashes. I'm talking about literally you can feed in and get a lot of similarity across products. And sometimes you can look at a website and you can see, or a piece of content and see there's AI in it. But AI is really not the human storytelling differentiation engine, right? So that what when we think about connecting in the mind of the buyer and building that brand before they decide to buy, the human brain is wired for storytelling. The human brain is wired to remember stories, and the empathetic, authentic stories are what sticks, right? And so, like, if you think of your childhood, for example, I grew up in Pittsburgh as a Steelers fan, and you may remember there is a Coke commercial where a little boy shares a Coke with a famous NFL football player, Mean Joe Green. And Mean Joe Green throws him his shirt from the field because Mean Joe Green is depressed. And that is like a phenomenal example of storytelling to sell a Coke, have a
Yeah.
Coke and a smile, right? And I still remember that some 40, 50 years later, growing up as a child. And we all think of like Coca-Cola, for example, or maybe Anheuser-Busch as amazing storytellers, right? And that drives brand memorability, which in turn drives brand preference. I would never imagine any AI we have today to invent that commercial, because AI doesn't have empathy, AI doesn't have the human experience, and so forth. Now, it could help you sharpen it when the human comes up with the idea. And so I think we're going to have the haves and the have-nots. Everybody's going to have AI, and everybody's going to use AI to make the marketing engine smarter and to analyze data better and, mass produce content,
Yeah.
among other things, right? But the real differentiated ones are going to connect through community and storytelling.
It's like human prompt side is going to be the thing that is, because everything else just will merge to the common center, right? Of
Yeah, and you as a business, so let's say you've got, 4 or 5 different vendors in, say, non-human identity, for example.
sure.
And non-human identity is a basic category, and that basic category has a set of facts and has a set of features, right? And each vendor may have their slight variation of what's new, but if they're all kind of using AI to mass produce content, give or take their one unique feature, it's roughly going to come out the same, right? And the more vendors there are in a particular market, the more the sameness can ultimately kind of come out. And so I think that again, if we think about Mad Men, for example, Mad Men was all about, if you go back to the 1950s, post-war, mass production was on the rise in the United States, and there were 30 kinds of toasters and 40 kinds of wall ovens and so on and so forth, along with cereals and everything else. And everybody was selling on technical features like I have more whole grain, or, my oven goes to 450, not 400, or whatever those things are. And then the rise of Mad Men, turned the world. And whether you love the TV series or not, I certainly encourage you to watch it. But that whole thing happened. That was the rise of modern advertising, where we moved from feature selling to storytelling. And the most effective ads, 99% of the time, had human emotion attached to them. And that's what breaks through now, right? In the sea of social media and all of the digital media and all the stuff that's hitting people, authentic storytelling is still what pops out. And that if that storytelling flows through the community, goes into the community, comes from people in the community, and you share it back into the community becomes an amplifier of it, right? And then you get take advantage of social media and physical events because the community is actually echoing the stories you're telling and giving you new stories that you can tell, right?
What is it about a community that sounds like it becomes an engine for creating for like finding or growing these stories? Because is that the hard part? Without a community, you like where does the story come from, Uncle Bob?
There's different sources of stories, right? So a couple ones to give examples of that I've been around. So one is the founder story of why a company got started. And that's usually because a founder experienced some problem in life and they couldn't find anybody else to solve the problem. And they decided to go solve the problem by starting a company. And for anyone who's worked in early stage, oftentimes the founder story, founding the company, is really the company story that can be authentic and empathetic and really interesting and unique, right? And that's where you have founder-led selling. And, we see the rise of founders being super active, doing talks and, on social media and things like that. So that's one class. Another class is, or category would be existing communities that are already there, right? So I'll give you an example of one. So I was part of the rise and the massive expansion of DevSecOps around the DevOps world, right? And DevSecOps was all about bringing sort of automated security into the DevOps world, and DevOps was all about shifting from waterfall and slow moving processes to rapidly building and deploying software brought about by SaaS infrastructure and tooling and everything else, right? And so the DevOps world kind of was a giant groundswell in development, and DevSecOps was a groundswell in security. And a friend of mine, Derek Weeks and Mark Miller, came up with this idea called All Day DevOps. And All Day DevOps, although they worked at Sonatype, was not about Sonatype. All Day DevOps was about bringing people in the DevOps and the DevSecOps world together to share their stories. And it created 24 hours, yes, 24 hours of live storytelling the first year. And there were like 3,000 or 4,000 people there. By the fourth or fifth year, there were like 80,000 people and 6 tracks doing storytelling every half hour. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And All Day DevOps is still out there. But that was where they said, I'm going to create, the marketplace needs a way for these people to share stories. And so those guys created All Day DevOps as a way to create the echo chamber that encouraged people to share those stories and was a place for people to go to hear those stories. And it really did, I think, help accelerate the success of DevOps and DevSecOps, right? So sometimes it's the founder story. Sometimes there's this emerging community that hasn't locked together and doesn't have a place to go to share. So you create the vehicle to share it, right? And then they'll come and they'll share it, right?
Yeah.
And that's another way to go. You could try to create your own community, and certainly companies try to do that. And sometimes that works around your brand, but I'm a big believer in attach to an existing community or help a community form that's not your brand. It's around your problem set or your audience, because that's where you get authenticity, not vendor push.
One of the things that we were talking in your introduction about the cybersecurity, and for me, that seems like such a great industry for talking about differentiation. And you brought that up,
Yep.
that AI is not your differentiation engine. And you even see that at RSA and some other conferences where people become, I mean, they're crazy, amazing booths, but they're just like, they're the same and you don't quite remember everything. And if you were to ask me, I would tell you there was one booth where they were giving out old fashions starting at like 9 a.m. and that stood out. But a lot of the other ones, same giveaway, same pens, and it just starts blurring and you start just passing the booth and people like looking expectantly at you, but you're like, no, I'm good. Thank you. Just keep walking.
Yeah, I think that RSA is a really great example. In the manifesto I popped out, I talk about Wiz, right? So we have this RSA scheme of sameness that you just described. And I still remember the groundbreaking first year when Wiz showed up, and they're basically like a convenience store. Bright, poppy, commercially, conversationally, come in and have fun. It was the first time I saw people take selfies at RSA in a booth. Not because they worked for that company and they were promoting it, but because it was the super cool thing, right? And Wiz, we've all seen has been kind of a rocket, and there's a lot of really amazing things their founders did and the way they engineered the business. And this isn't just about brand. Wiz engaged in the community and said, hey, the community needs something different. The community can experience something different. Let's bring a different experience to the community because we're all in it together. And I think Wiz is an example of one of those in the cyber community where they're not the big black booth with the neon green or the dark red or the giant boogeyman, right? They are very, optimistic. They're cool. They're fun. They're unique and different, right? And that contributed to them in the online world as well as the things that they did in the offline.
What I mean, when you talk about community, because you have grown so many of them, are there things that you can do to prevent these stories
I
from?
mean, there are things that you could do to encourage them to come out or block them from coming out.
I guess maybe that's the question then on the encouragement side. how do you encourage them? I also wonder if there are people that are doing community wrong and then they're discouraging these stories.
Yeah, so I think, I'll talk about how, like, I engage in a new company, for example.
Yeah.
So I joined a company called NowSecure, which is an application security company, a couple of years before the whole ADO DevSecOps thing occurred, and I told a little bit of the story. And one of the things I realized in that world was there actually was a standards body called OWASP that was a community of like people who were getting together to create standards for application security. So I started spending time in that OWASP community to kind of see what it was and use it as a really good learning vehicle, along with the customers and so on and so forth. And what I realized was that OWASP had the cookbook, the recipe, the standards recipe that every app security professional should be using. And I met some great people, the original founders of OWASP, a lot of the OWASP spec leads, and so on and so forth, and realized that they needed an evangelism program. And I started one related to OWASP, right? And so that was sometimes us telling stories, but also, bringing others in to help do it. And OWASP has online events, mostly physical events. They have meetups and so on and so forth, and try to help amplify how they share. It was so important to us at NowSecure, actually, that we actually sponsored and hired some of the OWASP spec leads who were designing the standards, who had that huge amount of rich experience. And in bringing them in, not only do we help them evangelize the work they were doing, we gave them room to do the work because we knew it was better for the industry, right? So while they worked part-time on our products, they also worked on these open source tools and these standards in the community. And that was us at NowSecure boosting that community overall, right? So we found stories in that community. We brought them in and said, hey, these are product enhancements we might want, but also here are opportunities to do that. And so that evolution then got into, like, we had a NowSecure Connect event where a lot of these people would get together. We had the DevSecOps bunch that I created. There was a video cast series before video podcasting existed, where we brought a lot of these people in and we talked about what they were doing and how they were doing it and best practices to do it. And so some of it was encouraging people that I would meet at these events to be willing to tell their story, and then providing a vehicle to enable them to tell and share that story. And then you get this halo for you and your business because you're enabling this sharing, right? And so when we got to putting together, like, our own community conference, we brought these people and we had them share. They weren't all customers.
Right.
They were experts in something that we knew that our corporate community wanted, or the ADDO community wanted, or the OWASP community wanted. And so you get this synergistic thing that kind of occurs. And in all of that, you're actually amplifying your own company brand, your own personal brand, right, in the business that you're trying to grow. And so we took NowSecure from being known by no one to known by everybody in mobile AppSec, in a large part because of all the community and standards-based engagement we did. And I didn't spend an insane amount of money on marketing.
Right.
I spent the money in the community and with the community, not millions of dollars in hardcore brand building and everything else.
There seems to be some sort of element of selflessness with you enabling and empowering the message and putting the message out of these evangelists and not of yourself.
Yeah, it's very much that, right? So I do talks myself. Sometimes I'm representing my company. Oftentimes it's topical. I don't ram the product into the conversation. If I'm representing the company, I'm doing a talk on a topic, right? And a lot of it is for individuals maybe who want to do more things like you and I are doing right now, is what are the interesting topics you want to talk about? And I've had themes over the years of things I wanted to talk about, like the rise of inbound marketing. And I'd be talking as a CMO about the rise of inbound marketing, or I'd be talking about the rise of AI in marketing and, how I'm using. And here I am today now. My big thing is, by God, yes, you absolutely need to use AI, but AI will crush your differentiation if you still don't have the human community story part. Right. And my
Right.
learning are there's never a silver bullet in marketing, even though we always race to it. Everybody bought HubSpot and Marketo and or sales bot Salesforce or whatever. And then we're like, oh, pay that. And, I'm going to spend millions on Google, whatever. There's never a silver bullet. It's always kind of a mix, that multi-marketing mix, and the mix changes over time. But I still think the one constant is community and authentic storytelling for the last 50 years, no matter what's going on. Storytelling in and with and through the community, bringing authentic stories in and through the community is really how individuals, brands, and companies and products, really do the breakout differentiation and win.
Yeah, it's not those fads, huh? The constant fads that spring up and around and, hey, it's display advertising and whatever.
Yeah. Well, they all contribute, right? But it's the
Yeah.
same thing like when I talk about AI doing everything. Once everybody, like I'll go back to the NHI market. Once every one of them is doing paid Google and paid social and display and retargeting and everything else, then you're back to sameness, right? The channels you're using and if the channels you're using and the message you're using is basically the same, you're still in that sameness,
Right.
right? But if you have four of them doing traditional sameness AI driven ads, and then you have another one who's telling the story of how NHI saved a life or something, like I realize that might be ridiculous, but I'm just using that as something completely different. The oddball of the authentic storytelling is the one's going to pop out.
100% every time.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I just want to say one thing. I had somebody argue with me the other day. They said this is just branding. I'm like, no, branding is a message and a style and how you want to look and feel. And yes, this supports branding, but this is where you take the brand, right? It's how your brand essence grows out, right? Do you have a community pillar? Do you have authenticity in your brand, right? Those sorts of things. And that's, I think, how the real differentiation and growth will occur in this next wave for businesses of all kinds.
We keep saying authentic every time we say story. What when is it not authentic? When do you see that being misused? Or is that part of the sameness problem too? Like it's not really your story, you just got it from AI and
Yeah, I think that the more it reads mechanical or typical words that you would know, is inauthentic. I think we think about sources of authentic. It's sort of like I'm a good example of what it is, because I think we mostly can see what it isn't. But if we think about real authentic things, like I was in a storytelling call yesterday, and someone put up the video of Steve Jobs unveiling the MacBook Air. And we all know Steve was a legendary storyteller. If you haven't seen that recently and you're looking for motivation on storytelling in the community and authentic storytelling in the community, go find a YouTube video of Steve Jobs rolling out the MacBook Air. And if you remember, I was at that launch event, not in the room, but in another room, because I was doing a lot in mobile with the iOS and the iPhone side of the house. The MacBook Air came out after the original iPhone, historically. Um, and if you remember, he had a manila office envelope and he pulled it out of the envelope and showed how thin and small it was. And so, now that was to a large extent, there was already this existing Apple community, and he was in bringing this great story into the community about, and there's this space for this really lightweight, really easy to use, you're going to love it, kind of device in between like the MacBook and MacBook Pro. Right. And
oh,
so, I think that's a great example of using storytelling, within a community. And then the other thing that Apple used to do, and I don't know if they do it so much now because I don't watch the launches as much, is they would bring people on stage or have a nugget of a video of somebody using the new thing they were launching, right? And so you could see that experience of someone lighting up and having a great experience with the new thing, whatever the new thing was. Right.
yeah. No, as you were speaking, I pulled up and put it on mute and yeah, we're gonna link to this in the show notes so people can go check it out. Just like you described, the screen showed the manila envelope, and sure enough, the thing was in it in life too. So it wasn't just, oh, look at my cool screenshot. He actually held it up there, and then that one of those sly grins. Saying, guess what's in here? Look how I can hold it with my fingertips. Brilliant. Yeah, man, what a great example. We'll definitely link to that. I guess even just breaking down story a little bit further, even beyond the authenticity, what makes for a good story?
Yes, I think a good story. And there's lots of debates about what's a good story and not a good story.
Yeah.
And I think we could share in the notes the manifesto that I published. I'm going to be publishing a couple of resource lists. So I'm going to publish a list on really good books for storytelling, really good website resources for storytelling. I'm also going to be publishing a list for community, so to crib on. And so stay tuned. This is going to live through the summer as I continue to share new things. What makes storytelling? I think there's a handful of things in it. One interesting thing is ask your favorite AI what is authentic storytelling and see what you get back.
Okay.
You will get some interesting things depending on like which of the different chats you're gonna.
What was the question?
What is authentic human storytelling? Ask that question and see what you get.
All right.
Um, Authentic human storytelling, I think, again, can be learned from some of the Steve Jobs stories, from looking at Mad Men. The Mad Men, Kodak was rolling out a slide carousel, and they turned it into the family history time machine. And so, the slides in the Kodak carousel was the time machine of telling this family story, not just the mechanics of what you do with slides. Those are all really good examples. And I think story has emotion to it. It's got human emotion to it. Of course, there's, the sort of how to write a book or a movie. You've got a hero and an anti-hero and all the rest. And that may go in there, but you can still tell stories without the hero and the anti-hero. Storytelling is really about not talking about facts and figures or benefits. It's talking about the journey of an experience in a way that bonds with the person who hears it and stayed with them. So you have 30, 60, 90-second commercials that are little stories, right? Like the Franco Harris Have a Coke and a Smile that I gave. You have the 20-minute stories that is Steve Jobs, kind of launching the MacBook Air, right? And they have these different lengths. They all have some similar things to them. There's a human emotion and a human context, and it has a lived experience to it. It has a lived experience to it. And so, it could be, it's easier to use this thing. It could be when I was a kid, I did this thing. It could be, it was hard to do this work the other day. And then I came into this thing. The more it's got a little bit of a human emotion and empathy in it, the more effective it is, right? Because what you're doing is you're connecting to the emotional centers of the brain so that your brain remembers it. If I can do one sidebar, I took a class from a branding guy. Well, he didn't call it branding. It was like branding guy in the 90s.
Sure.
And he said, the art of selling your product is not telling the customer it's the best product. The art of selling a product is showing the customer you're the only solution to their problem. And that stuck with me, because if you think about this, what you're really doing is you're using a story to show how a unique experience has occurred, or a unique way of solving a problem can happen, or something like that. And that makes it authentic, and then people remember it.
Something about stories, we just remember those. And to your point, the emotional connections and everything. You think about classes, schools, presentations. I remember the story, not the bullet points.
Yeah, you remember the arc, right? You might remember a picture, like there's a picture or a slide or a piece of art on the wall or something that like has this really highly impactful. And I think our brains are so organized around pattern matching. Part of this is you're standing out from the pattern, but with it some sort of anti-pattern that is a story or a story in visual that makes it stick to the brain, right? Now, some of that is branding, of course, but again, over a sustained period of time, if you're in a community, communicating in that community, sharing your own empathetic human stories, collecting the stories, amplifying the stories, they start amplifying your stories, like the whole thing just spins.
Up
Right.
and up and up and up and upward.
That's ideally where you want to end up.
Hey, marketing leaders, it's Amanda here from Ringmaster B2B Podcasting. In today's market, B2B buying is built on one thing: trust. And there's no better way to build that trust than through a podcast that builds connection. At Ringmaster, we help you launch and grow shows that will amplify your brand and can help drive real demand. The best part? We handle all the heavy lifting so you can focus on the big picture. So if you've been thinking about starting a podcast for your brand or taking your existing one to the next level, visit ringmaster.com to chat and book a call.
Yeah. Man, okay. Fantastic. Same question on community. What makes for a good community?
I think that community is an interesting thing to think about, because we're all in many communities, right? You got like a community at work, you've got maybe a community if there's an activity you do, right? I think one of the reasons that things like sports teams do well is that sense of community around the team, right? So I made the Steelers example earlier, and Pittsburgh fans are known to be kind of nuts, and we follow the Steelers everywhere. But there's other kinds of communities.
Well, sorry, quick question. Do you think they're more or less rowdy than Philadelphia fans?
I think they're equally rowdy.
Equally rowdy. You
And-
heard it here.
Yeah. So, and there's, in sports is an example, but there's there's other examples of communities. Like
Yeah.
my middle daughter is a voracious book reader, and she's super active in a couple layers of book communities, including manga stuff, coming out of Japan.
Sure.
And she and this whole group of hundreds of people will get online at like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. on a Friday night, because that's when their favorite manga author is publishing the next chapter of a book digitally. And they get online in this forum. And then they're all like reading it and interacting it and talking about it and loving it. And it's the most amazing thing. She discovered it in college and she still does it. Right. And so there's all kinds of communities, right? Why do people cosplay? It's another kind of community, right? Why do we have fans for certain classes of movies, right? And then you get fun community things like Star Trek versus Star Wars, right? And the whole
Which camp are you in?
Well, can you look over my shoulder? Can you tell what's on my shelf?
I'm thinking, well, you know what? It's hard to say no to Mandalorian and Baby Yoda. Like, those guys are legit.
Yeah, but there's also a Star Trek Enterprise. Those are all recycled steel figures and figurines from a variety of artists that I've collected over the years. So I'm a space junkie, space movie junkie. So that's my thing. I think I read some Arthur C. Clarke and Robert Heinlein when I was a kid, and it just stuck with me.
Heinlein is absolutely a wizard. I love
That's
him.
all my life, right? And so it turned into these amazing space movies, got older. So I think community, there are communities there. So the big thing to think about is you have three choices, which is there one or more communities that already exist that you can attach to and become an active participant and an amplifier? Second one is there a nascent opportunity to help form one, but you help the community form it? You're not forming it because of yourself or your business. And then the third one is form one around your business, right? And I think really, other than a user group, that's all you want for your business. Don't try to create some kind of intergalactic community. It can be very difficult to create a really amazing community, inside a business. It's a rarity that you get something like a Dreamforce from Salesforce that becomes this giant, like, echo chamber of a community. Remember, RSA today is an independently owned business bought out by private equity, but RSA was originally from the company called RSA. Right. And they sold it off, and it's now part of an events company. And so, building community is really hard, really expensive if you're going to do it yourself. And people may want to attach to your brand as a community, but I think it's more about, for your business, small or large, especially in B2B tech and cyber, find a community you can attach to and be a super active participant in the community. And if there's some emerging market space or some emerging problem set and there's not a community, get together with others, seek out others in the community and see if you can find other people to work with you to cultivate one. Like, Derek and Mark did in forming All Day DevOps, for example, or I did in forming the DevSecOps bunch. I just sought out people and said, there's room for this. Let's see if we can find more people who want to jump on the boat and kind of do it with us.
Yeah. I think you've joined the CMO Coffee Talks. Have you joined that? What's your take on that? Because I think there's a lot of communities for marketers, and I'd be interested to see how you differentiate them and how you just distinct them in your head separately.
Yeah. So as a CMO, I've been in a couple of different kinds of groups. There was CMO Club. That was kind of a paid participation thing. I was one of the founding members of the CMO Club chapter here in DC. Many years before that, I had already formed something called the Technology Marketing Alliance with two partners back in the 90s. I can tell that story later. CMO Coffee Talk is a rocking example of super effective community. It is hundreds of B2B CMOs, mostly B2B tech, and some B2C CMOs getting involved. And it started out as getting together around the country. And when COVID hit, it turned into let's have a virtual coffee on Fridays. And today, I think there's somewhere between 500 and 1,000 CMOs or up and coming CMOs in the Slack channels. And in a given Friday, there might be 150 people in the 8 a.m. Eastern call, and there might be 250 people on the 8 a.m. Western call. So there's 2 calls a day on Friday, and it's phenomenal. It's community driven. The 2 people, Matt Hines and Latine Content, got it started, and it's just keeps rolling. And Matt drives it, and he's virulently anti-vendor, anti-pitch, anti-everything. And people fight to defend the community. Like if vendors pop up, they get like a game of whack-a-mole pushed out. And there's some really great things that we've been doing in that group. And so there are CISO communities I have heard from CISOs that work really well, that aren't vendor-centric, that are built and run by CISOs, and they love it because it's where they can go to share their challenges, where they can go and share authentic experiences. It's Chatham House rules. And things like that, right? And some of those are vendor run, but most of those are, again, practitioner run, meaning people who are in the community form and grow the community.
Right.
And I think those are really phenomenal. And as vendors, we always want to like poke into that or manipulate that or whatever. And the thing about it is be very careful on breaking it. Authentic communities are what works. And as Matt will tell you, he works very hard to keep it a community of peers, for peers, helping peers, not a place for vendors to shill.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. And I think it's worked incredibly well. I mean, it's amazing. CMO Council has a lot of members. They're more consumer B2C, but there's still a little bit of shilling going on there. CMO Club got sold to Salesforce right when COVID happened and collapsed, because you couldn't have events anymore. So I think that one's been really quite amazing. The cyber marketing community, under Gina, as we said earlier, she's formed a really amazing, over the last 5 years, group of cybersecurity marketing professionals at all levels who get together and share best practices and learn from each other. There's an annual conference. There's super active Slack channels. We just had a get together here in DC this week. And if you're in cybersecurity marketing, get into that group. Absolutely get in that group. Whether you're looking to expand a career into it, or you're already in it, you want to share, there's a huge amount of community sharing that goes on there, best practice sharing. It's very much community led. And she, like Matt at CMO Coffee Talk, understands you got to go real light on the vendor stuff. It really is about, enabling the peers to share their best practices together and amplifying the really great stories that come out of the community.
Yeah. Man, powerful. My next question for you really is like, who are you? Who are you? How do you know all these things? Can you take me back in time, little you days, right? Little Brian running around. Did you know you're going to be like, how do you describe you in words? A thought leader of thought leaders, right? A marketer, a technologist, entrepreneur. What was it like growing up?
Yeah, I think we all have these interesting journeys, and I actually had somebody who wanted to record my historical story for they're doing life stories now for people over 55. I didn't just say that, but for me, when I was a kid, I wanted nothing. I wanted to be a Disney cartoonist. I had some of that story DNA in me. I have an appreciation for art. I could not for the life of me make my hand draw things at the level that you need to be an artist.
Fair.
Right?
Yeah.
But today I'm very creative and I do a lot of storytelling. And I think what I missed back then is I confused storytelling with the ability to draw a comic strip, with the ability to draw the things, right? So that's kind of one interesting milestone that led me to where I am now. I got involved in late grade school and high school into something called the Pennsylvania Junior Academy of Science. In that, you would do scientific research and get up and do a 10-minute pitch to scientists. And they were basically teaching you almost like a thesis defense model.
Really?
That's where all my stage fright disappeared. That's where I learned how to get up and talk. That's where I learned a whole ton of communication skills. That was around science, which became my love. But it was really super cool. And, you could win awards for speaking. And I was a Westinghouse Science Talent Search winner, and so on and so forth. And I went the engineering path. I was a biomedical and electrical engineer. from Duke University because I thought I was going to go do the bioscience stuff. And while I was there, I got hooked up with a tech startup, and I caught the bug for tech startups. And so I've never been a biomedical engineer in my life. And the interesting thing that was the next formative piece was inside the tech startup, we were 5 or 6 engineers, and we had 2 really big multi-million-dollar customers, and we couldn't find any more customers, and it died. The reason it died is we didn't understand sales and marketing because we were a bunch of dumb engineers. So I'm in Research Triangle Park, and I'm slogging around, trying to get jobs at other startups because the whole tech scene was booming there at Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, RTP. And I landed a job where I interviewed on an interstate over the phone, and drove back because I was on my way to Atlanta to interview, but I interviewed with a company in Raleigh from a phone booth. And one of the things in the interview was, I'm an engineer, but I want to learn how the business works. Can you teach me how the business works? So I joined them, and I moved from engineering into product management. They got bought. Then I wound up at a larger company. That company had an executive development program. So as a product manager, I went through the executive development and learned business and all the rest. And then I learned my true art was product marketing and storytelling. Like, boom, like 25 or 26 years old, I'm realizing that I am really good at figuring out how to capture stories, which we would call use cases of what people want for features, working with engineering to get them built, and then converting them into stories to sell the software. And so I rocketed my way up. I jumped product marketing, product management, eventually marketing, general manager of a unit, lived and worked around the world, all that kind of formative stuff that made me the person I am today. And so I've been a CMO or chief product officer since early 2000s in now 6 companies.
Man, and something about that tech background that can just make for a great market. It's that engineer, because it's like almost like a creative engineering. You're still connecting wires and you're still connecting dots. It's just a different kind of engineering.
So I messed around with writing mobile apps when I was in mobile app security, but I was not good at it. And I was not good at the mechanics of the security. But I could teach and tell the stories about the right way to do app security, about the way to help developers figure out their code, about the way to make it easy for platform engineering to plug in tools that would automatically do the work with them. And so the ability to go down just enough into the technology and not only understand the basics of it, but also understand the empathy for the people who need to use it, I think is really a power skill. And so when I talk with companies, I do this left brain, right brain thing, which is I can transform very technical concepts into easy to consume, stories or concepts, but I can also dig into the data that makes all of that work. What I'm not going to do is write lines of code in this technology because that's not my skill set. That's why you hire developers.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
As much as anything I learned, you don't have to be a developer to sell to developers. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be an expert in mobile security to sell mobile security. You need to be good is good enough, and you need to be really good at communicating in the community with, empathetic, authentic stories, be it your own, your teams, your customers, the experts, and all of those things are kind of how the whole thing works.
Brilliant. And I have one final question for you.
Sure.
It's a bit of a hypothetical question, but you've read Heinlein and author. So I may or may not have a time machine in my backyard. Let's say you come visit, customer event, community event out in the Boston area, drive up north to New Hampshire. It may or may not be covered in a tarp in the backyard. So we use this particular kind of time machine to go back in time, and you get a chance to meet yourself 4 days after you graduated with that engineering degree. What do you tell yourself? You can have a convo. What are you going to say?
You had the right idea jumping into a startup, is what I would say. I think I would then say, but make sure you understand it's more than just the engineering. So I still would have done the same thing again. What I really wish that I had taken a little, some more business school type classes so I could sort of understand the mechanism of business. At that point in time, I didn't understand how things got bought and sold. I didn't understand, I just thought you could build some technology and somebody would want it. I didn't understand the sort of full life cycle nature of how the world actually operates. So I think I already was wired into communities. I was super active in music and art and stage and, some things like that. I was already active in the engineering working groups and in college, and everything else. So I got all that stuff. The community side was already part of my DNA. It was sort of figuring out the business side of what really makes a business work.
Yeah, hearing you describe it makes me go, do I even know that? I don't know. Maybe that we'll have you back for another episode to talk through the foundation of just how people buy. Because I think there's a lot of folks vibe coding and then realizing that, okay, building it's not the challenge right now. It still is the distribution. It still is getting people to come buy it.
I'm involved on and off with some entrepreneur groups, and I coach about the difference between building some cool tech and having a real business, right? Happy to have a follow-up on that.
Yeah.
I don't have, it's not, the secret sauce is there isn't a silver bullet. It's, you got to have the right thing, the right time, the pain exists, capital. It really is kind of the miracle that we have this amazing miracle startup engine in the US around tech, because we've done enough of them now that there's enough experienced people that you can take, someone who's got a new idea and collect people who've helped other people with new ideas, grow them, and kind of build a machine, right? Build this new thing out of it. And I think it's super exciting to do that. And then there's the scale piece, which is, okay, I'm going to go back to our theme, right? All right, I'm in a market. We're all 20 to 40 million in revenue. We all look the same. Now what am I going to do? Oh, I'm going to use AI to beat my competitors. Uh-oh, they're going to use AI to beat me. And you're right there for the same leveling, right?
Right.
And so, and you're going to be back to, what is authentic storytelling? Where is my community? How do I plug into that community? How do I amplify that community? How do I bring authentic storytelling in? While those other guys are duking it out with their AI engines, battling, creating more content, you're over here really creating a movement, right, that will differentiate you and make you memorable in the mind of the people, that when they have the problem, they're ready to solve it by buying. And you're the first one they think of, or you're on the short selection list, right?
Boom. There it is. There it is, man. How do we get plugged in to you? How do we get connected? Where do we go?
Just find me on LinkedIn. I'm most active on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect and DM me if you heard me today and you want to dig in anymore. Find me there. I am Brian C. Reed on LinkedIn, because there's a lot of Brian Reeds on LinkedIn, so you can find me. I currently work at a company called Corsha, and I've worked at some other companies I mentioned, like NowSecure, and I've got a long history in AppSec. And you can also search for the Technology Marketing Alliance, where TMA is still running here in DC after 20 years. We're celebrating 20 years this summer. It's pretty exciting.
Oh, congratulations on that.
Yep.
I mean, that's proof is the historical timeline there.
Yeah, no, it's a really good team here early. And then with you, I'm going to share a couple of other resources that you can put in the reader notes that, people can connect to. And I'm a big believer in amplifying others' great work, right? So there's a lot of resources out there that we can all share and take advantage of. And by the way, if you have a really cool community storytelling thing, please share it with me, because I'm going to start amplifying others, because I want to help people see this is really realistically doable. One of the ones to watch out for if you're in cyber, there's this amazing movie coming called Midnight in the War Room. So Thomas Bullock and his group over at Paris have created probably the ultimate documentary on the evolution of good guy, bad guy cyber. It's called Midnight in the War Room. If you're going to Black Hat, that's when they're going to unveil the movie. The preview is out now. So that might be the ultimate in doing what I'm prescribing in cybersecurity, which is amplifying the community stories by writing the world's first cybersecurity documentary.
Damn. All right. Well, we're definitely going to check that out. And that reminds me, I need to look into getting myself to Black Hat. So good to go. Man, thank you so much, Brian, for coming on here. Thank you for having an awesome conversation with me, letting me bounce a billion questions off you, talking community, authentic storytelling. This has just been a wild ride, and I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about it more, and it was really great to meet you today.
Yeah, hell yeah. And for those listening, if you learned something, I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here, front and back. Then share this with someone else. 1 person, 2 people, 9,000 people is cool too. But like, who needs to hear this? maybe you're starting to see some AI slop out there. If you see your friend and they're throwing that sameness out, help them differentiate. Give them this episode. They can learn from it. And ideally get their authentic storytelling live and get a community, making it all happen. So powerful. Brian, thank you again, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, everybody.
All right, everyone. It's been another crazy cool, very exciting episode of the Connect to Market Pod. We will see you all next time. And that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at connecttomarket.com. Connect to Market is sponsored by Ringmaster, creating podcasts and communities that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth.